Welcome to Get Data Driven with Telemetry here in this Business Central launch event for the 2022 Release Wave 1. In this session, I will take you through getting more data driven with telemetry, not necessarily a lot of technical details about telemetry. So I'm going to show you how we can use the telemetry maturity model to make more use of data in your partner practice. Then I'm going to show you the two Power BI apps we have on telemetry data. The first one is on AppSource and have been released back in June. The second one is now in public preview, and that's a Power BI app for ISVs or for app telemetry. Then I'll show you how you can start alerting with telemetry, getting more proactive. Instead of just looking at what happened, you can now take an action if something happens. And then finally, I'm going to show you a little bit about how you can control your telemetry costs. So let's get started. The telemetry maturity model was something we developed to make it easier for you if you have these questions about, I know telemetry is something we should use, but I'm not really sure how to get started within our partner practice. So what we did was we took the Gartner BI maturity model, which have these 5 stages: unaware, tactical, focused, strategic, and pervasive. And then we interpreted that model in the context of you as a partner and telemetry as the data source. And we shook that model, and this is what came out of that. So the maturity model describes the different stages and also gives you some quick wins that you might be able to take it to the next stage. So let's take an example. So each of these slides have some characteristics that you might read your partner situation into. When you're unaware, this is typically where you have enabled telemetry on one-on-one environments or apps, or at least you know this is important, but you kind of, but what now what? So the advice here comes in 2 flavors. One for what we call the business sponsor and one which we call the technical sponsor. Let me explain that. The business sponsor is typically head of sales, or it could be project leads, people that don't necessarily write code, but implement projects or sell projects. And for these people, it's important that the use of telemetry data is something where you don't have to write code. You just need to consume this data and have some insights. And then the technical sponsor could typically be head of support or the product owner or development leads and the people working there. It's typically where you need to troubleshoot, analyze performance, analyze stability, use data in resolving problems for customers. And both of these roles can make the use of telemetry much easier in a partner practice. So for the first for the business sponsor, this is where you start using the Power BI apps, because this is something where you immediately can see data visually transformed from data into information, into insights. And the same thing actually applies for the technical sponsor. Use the Power BI app as is and dive into the performance report or the stability report. Maybe we should take a look. Let's go to the Power BI app for the environment. So here is the Power BI app for environments. I have installed it and configured it to point to my telemetry resource. And if I'm the business sponsor, I stay here at the usage report, where I have a lot of different things that I can dive into. For instance, I can look at sessions and I can look at how are people using the system. Is it administrators, delegated admins? Is it background or interactive sessions? I can see how people log in over the day or over the week. Here is Monday to Sunday. I can see in this particular setting that people are mostly active on a Wednesday. This is probably my data that is skewed. And I can also see that the peak period of this customer is between 9 and 3 in time zone of Copenhagen. Now, I can dive further into this. I can see what types of clients do they use. So for instance, I can see the browsers they use. I can dive into, it seems like they're using tablets. Maybe we could have a conversation about that in our follow-up meeting with the client. There seems some tablet usage. Is that something we should investigate together? If you're maybe a product owner, not necessarily writing code, but designing products or apps, you might want to look at how are the screen sizes the customers use. Are they using big monitors? Maybe you can design your UI like that. Or are they in a world where they still have small laptops running Windows XP with small screens and small resolutions? This matters when you design the user interface for that customer. You can see where do people log in. So in this particular customer, it seems like we're mostly in Europe, but we do have some Asian and North American users. So we can even see not only where they log in from, but which language they prefer in their client. Now, this can be used for a lot of things. For instance, if you're doing a rollout of a new project, this could give you insights that maybe together with the project sponsor on the customer end, maybe we need to have training in different languages. Maybe we want to make sure that our translations for the pertinent extensions actually work for people using, say, Czech language or Danish language, or the other way around. Actually, a lot of places in these reports, the absence of data also shows you a lot. In this particular case, I can see that people logging in from Denmark don't actually use the client in Danish. They use the English version. So maybe I can cut the costs of the expensive, special, high quality translations for Danish because no one is using it. Page views. I can see how people use the product. I can see which pages they use. I can see which reports they use, including, if I zoom in here, you can see that I can see which layouts they use. In this particular customer, they don't use Excel layouts. This is not necessarily an upsell opportunity, but if you have that follow-up meeting every quarter or semester or year with the customer, you could use this to drive a conversation such as, look, we got a new reporting features for end users in last semester that allows you to lay out your own reports with Excel. You're not using this. Should we set up a pilot for this? This could make it easier for us to collaborate on reporting, where we as your trusted partner deliver the data sets and you take care of the layouts. So that's one way of using statistics, either with absence or what people use. And similarly, for features, you can see the full feature set of the code or the features in Business Central, including apps, including pertinent extensions. If developers use the feature telemetry module to track uptake, usage, and errors, this will automatically be present in the usage report for the environment. So you can see things like which are the popular features. You can see how features are used over the day, over the week, and over a date. So lots of things you can use out of the box as what we call the business sponsor. There are tons of other things in here, checklists in case you want to control onboarding or go live, integrations, lots of different things that you can dive into. Let me put on my administrator's hat, or actually my technical sponsor hat, and dive into the performance report. So instead of you having to guess what you can use telemetry for with performance. We actually took some, you saw data being transformed from data into insights in the usage report, and now we take that even further into information that you can act on, some insights here on performance. For instance, I have a tile here that shows me that we have a login performance problem that can be fully solved from telemetry. We have 1,328 times that people had performance problems when logging in. And if I click this, and I will do that in a sec, I can, through the report, be taken directly into the root cause of that without me having to write a single line of KQL code. So that could be a quick win for the technical sponsor. Let's take a look. So if I click on slow logins, I get some statistics here on definitions, different definitions of slow. It could be maybe 1 second is too slow for you, maybe 2 or 5, depending on what's your acceptable limits. How many logins for which customers did experience this. But because we are in telemetry, we actually know more. We know that when we are on company open trigger, that can be found other places in telemetry, and we can dive further into that because we can look at the call stacks we have in telemetry that includes this. So here under further analysis, I can dive into long-running AL that happens on company open, or long-running SQL queries that happen in the context of on company open. Let's take the SQL query here. This will just filter my reports here on stack trace contains on company open, and then it will show me what are all the long-running SQL queries with that call stack that we have in telemetry. So I can dive into which methods was it, from which extension did this occur, in case it was not necessarily my extension. It could be Microsoft, it could be ISV or patented extension that added that slow call. And I can even dive into the call stack of where in the AL code it happens, and find out that this particular long-running AL is due to some code unit owned by someone, and I can go and reach out to my developers if it's a patented extension, to the ISV if this is happening in an app source app, or Microsoft open a support case and see what's going on. So these are some of the low-hanging fruits that you can get either in the super technical part of your partner practice or in the pre-sales, sales, let's say the more customer focused parts of your partner practice. Let's go back to the model and take it one step further. So the next step is the tactical stage. This is where you typically have some usage of telemetry or reports in parts of your partner practice. Sometimes it starts, actually very often this starts in support or troubleshooting. But you also have other parts of your partner practice that kind of look at this and say, oh, they're doing something over there that looks interesting. They're closing cases early on. They have like a very fast turnover of like making things happening for that customer. Interesting. How can I onboard to that? So this is where, for the business sponsor, maybe you want to dive further into telemetry. Maybe know more about usage reporting in the portal of application insights. Maybe know about, if you're a product owner for an app, what is the extension lifecycle that you get? What are the failures or the install failures or the upgrade performance problems that you have? You can get that in telemetry instead of asking partners about it. Or one story I heard was that an ISV actually used telemetry they know which version the customer is on for their app. So how many times have you had this where you need to go back and forth between customer, partner, and maybe ISV, Like the first question, what version are you on? How many emails do you need to send back and forth on that? Well, with telemetry, you can just look up, oh, customer is on version 42. Let's go. The technical sponsor might want to dive further into the error report and maybe even start with the KQL samples and Jupyter notebooks. So all of this is present on BC Tech repository, and I won't show it here again, but you probably know where to find that. Let me dive a bit into that error report and see if we can get some insights into the frustrations of your customers. Let's go to the app again. Right, so here we are on the app, and to the left here, we have opened the error report, and the error report comes with a dashboard of how are things going in 3 different dimensions. The first one is user errors. What are the errors that your users experience? What are the, can they log in? This is good, they can. There are 0 login errors. What are the error dialogues that they are seeing, and from where do they come from? What are the permission errors that they experience? Maybe you want to adjust something and remove that friction. And then finally, what is the error message feedback that they give you? So in version 20, in the last release, we added a new feature where whenever we show a user dialogue, an error dialogue for a user, there's a small text down here say, was this useful? Thumbs up and thumbs down. And all of these votings that your customers do, you get that here. So you can kind of measure like how frustrated are they and remove this friction. Let's take a look. So for instance, let's take a look at error message feedback. For instance, here we can see that we have 43 votes. They are all coming from the same customer. This is because the environment telemetry, you can use the same application insights resource for multiple environments. If you do that, this quickly shows you exactly which customer is affected by this. Then you can dive in and see like which language was this error message in. It might be a translation problem and not necessarily that the error message in its error in itself. Maybe that error has to be there, but the translation is meaningless in this particular case in the English version. You also get whether people voted yes or no and the actual error message. And then you can dive further from the report into where this happens, in which extension this error comes from, in which call stack it comes from, and you can also see a statistics on when it happens. Maybe people are voting, particularly on Thursdays and Fridays, they are like less happy here, and also whether they're like voting on this over the time of the day. I'm not sure these 2 matter a lot, but you can use this to make the quality of your apps per tenant extension and app source extensions better by seeing what are the error messages that your users do not understand. Let's go back to the dashboard here, and I won't go into the details of that, but the second class of errors here are related to integrations. So these are web services that cannot log in, or would be the first thing. If they can log in, maybe they fail somehow. Maybe they're calling in a wrong way. If maybe web services are calling out from Business Central and are failing. And in all these cases, there is an integration somewhere that is failing. And this might be something you want to like drive these numbers to 0. So that, because Business Central is not the only thing in that ecosystem of apps for the customer. Business Central might be the central part you integrate to, but if you have integrations calling in or out, and these integrations don't work, that for the customer is still part of their ERP system. So make sure that you drive these numbers down to 0. And then finally we have system errors. So this is where you have typically set up problems in Business Central. It could be that you have, I don't know, in this case we are happy, there are no failing job queues, but it could be that you see them here. We can see things like database deadlocks or environment or extension lifecycle failures. Maybe apps are failing to install or update and so on. So this is typically what I could see here is that a lot of these errors is something you want to control and look carefully for during go live, and maybe in these precious like fragile weeks after go live, make sure that you have all the errors under control and drive these to zero before go live and monitor after go live. Okay, let's go back to the model and see what else we can do. Third step is focused stage or step. Now, this is where you use telemetry and analytics on telemetry, likely in implementation projects. Just like I explained, the error report, you can use that before and after go live. Now, you see that for the projects that actually use this, you might have like fewer errors, like more happy customers, more successful go lives. And maybe in your partner practice you go, there's something going on here that we could spread out in our, let's say, the project model, the way we do projects with customers. So this is where, for the business sponsor, you might want to make this repeatable and make sure that you do this not only for go live, maybe later you want to do things cross customer and see if you can have success for one customer, give project success for another one. And for the technical sponsor, maybe this is related to the fact that you can you can monitor across your customers and maybe even have a business model where you start having add-on services and monitor things and get rid of problems before they seem to occur for the customer, and have some kind of subscription model for support or troubleshooting. And we saw in the app different ways of using that, both the report, the error report, the performance report, especially if you want to do things where you administer across and have maybe that administrative service. We can use the final report we haven't seen yet, which is the administration report. Let's go back to the app and see how that could be used. So here I am in the administration part of the report. And this one has pages for a lot of different things that might be of use if you deal with especially cross-company or cross-customer analytics. The first app or the first report is inventory. So here you can see a list of, or an overview of all the different environments in telemetry. It could be if you have multiple environments emitting telemetry, then you know the AD, tenants, and the environment names. You can navigate to the admin center or directly to the, here are the URLs for the admin center. These guys here are the URLs directly into the product if you want to use that for navigation. You have some statistics about the number of companies in these environments, as well as which version are they currently on and which localization are they currently on. We have some different localizations here. And in case you are using tenant administration, things such as deleting or renaming environments, you can actually see that here, whether this is only in telemetry as a deleted, it's no longer in the admin center, but it still resides in telemetry for how long your retention policy is. You have a way to monitor updates. So in this page, you can see things like when are environments scheduled for an update. So this is the date that you put in Tenant Admin Center, and you get a full overview of that here. And you also have an idea here about when is this going to be updated with the deadline set by Microsoft. We set some deadline 30, 60 something days to update to the next minor. And you can see where people are coming from and where they're updated into. And whether, of course, the next update is available. So that gives you an overview of environment updates. So another part of this is for the support department. Let's say that you get a call from the customer that something has changed since Friday. And many times it's because of a system change. It could be a change to the environment. Maybe the environment was updated. Maybe the environment was, someone did a point-in-time restore, so now data is different. Maybe a company was deleted and that's why you don't get data. Maybe an extension was installed or uninstalled. Or maybe a configuration change was done to the system and therefore we have a different behavior. All of these types of changes, they have their own report. Down here you can see environment changes, company lifecycle, extension changes, indexes, fields, retention policies, so on. And so if you want to dive into each of these, you can do that. But you can also maybe start here in the all changes report. And that gives you across all of these types of signal, what was it that changed? And you can zoom into what was Friday. So let's take that scenario of something happened on Friday, and in this data set, Friday is the 24th of August. If I zoom down to this, apparently there was a lot of data changes that happened during this period in time. And the way you get data for data changes in here is to configure the feature called field monitoring. You can do that for sensitive fields such as credit card or bank account, other things where you actually want to have some event log to telemetry that this happened. But there's also another use case of this, simply all the configuration changes in Business Central. If you monitor the fields in that, they will light up here, and you would immediately see that the reason why it was different on Friday is that someone changed the way to do posting. Maybe they disabled background posting or whatever that configuration change was. Okay, let's go back to the model and take us to the next step. Okay, so now we are on stage 4, strategic. And if you're here, you probably now have these cross-customer analytics and get an idea of if an error happens for this or that customer. And maybe you use this for performance regressions, app failure rates, what have you. To get from reactive to proactive, you want to move, first of all, it might be that you want to take part of your telemetry into long-term storage. So by default, telemetry is 90 days. If you want to take strategic decisions on telemetry, you might want to go back further than 90 days. You can do that in a number of ways. The first one is simply set the retention policy to 2 years. That's the max. But you would pay a cost for that. So that's feasible, but maybe you don't need the detailed telemetry for 2 years. Maybe you just want operational telemetry for 90 days and some kind of aggregated data to take decisions upon. So one way that we do internally in Microsoft in our team is we take aggregated snapshots of the telemetry that we find important, and we put that into a data lake, put Power BI data flows and Power BI reports on top. So maybe that's something you could do as well. That would be of interest for you. Another thing is, and that the reason for that is that telemetry can be used not only for troubleshooting and the immediate things, but also things like, did we improve customer satisfaction on our app in the last release until now? Or how are we doing? We have this big performance initiative. How is it going? Is it actually changing something? Did we have fewer long-running queries last year compared to this year, or release over release. These are the kind of strategic things you can use telemetry for before, because you use the data to take decisions that will change your business, whether it's an app or the way you deal with your customers. And the final thing is, if you want to go from reactive to proactive, you need to start thinking about alerting on telemetry. For now, I've just shown you telemetry is basically just usage data. Something happened in the past, and then you look at it. But what if you could get a notification that if this happens, I actually want to get an email or something in Teams? There are a few ways to do that, and I'll show you a few examples of how you can achieve that. The first example I want to show you is maybe hidden a bit in Docs, and we'll see how we can make this more visible. But it's here right now for you. If you go to the administration part of our documentation and navigate down to Manage Notifications down here. So let me just show you real quick. So Administration Docs, Admin Center, Manage Notification. This is where the gold is buried. You simply dive down to the section on Application Insights that kind of tells you the story of how you can alert on telemetry. But my colleague Joost added 3 apps that you can just install by clicking here on these Deploy to Azure. So what these are logic apps that with some alert condition defined in a Custo query will alert in some different types of channels. So the first app is available updates. So instead of you getting one email for each environment that now the update is available, wouldn't it be nice if you manage hundreds or thousands of customers to have that in a more aggregated fashion? Well, with this app, you can do that. This sample, the first sample here, will give you an email with aggregated across all the environments that have telemetry enabled, that now updates are available. Do you have to send an email? No. You can just take that logic app and change the destination. Instead of an email, maybe send it to Teams. Maybe send it to your the system where you deal with that, whether that is Azure DevOps or something else, doesn't matter. And so that's the beauty of the first app. The second thing is a bit more severe. Let's say that someone deletes an environment. It could also be deleting a company or uninstall a very important app. Maybe you want to know before this turns into a big crisis. And with this app, you just get, in this case, you get a Teams message that this particular environment was deleted. And now you can take action, and maybe you can make sure that this is saved before the customer actually gets to log in. And the final app here is, and these are just examples. If you have environments that fail for some reason, and you maybe wanted to set that update window again, this app will notify you for that. And again, this happens across all environments in your telemetry, not one notification for each environment. The reason I'm saying this is also that we could probably build a notification feature for Business Central. And I'm 100% sure that we will, no matter what we do, we will disappoint all of you. We will never be able to capture the right template, the right channels, the right timings, whether you want to set an alert on 15-minute basis or every day. We can never get that right. And therefore, maybe we should just make it very, very easy for you to set up these alerts and change them to your needs instead. If you have ideas about other ways of alerting, what could you do? Well, here's something for you. Let me open a new browser tab and I will type in aka.ms/bc telemetry samples. Let me zoom in on that for you here. So aka.ms/bc telemetry samples. This takes you to the BC Tech repository where we have all the code samples, especially the ones for telemetry are here under App Insights. And up here under alerts, we have explained how you can set up alerts if something happens. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, but typically you set up alerts when something bad happens. And then we have added KQL sample queries up here that probably cover a lot of the things you would like to alert on. And if you have other ideas, you can contact us and we'll add more. So these alerting queries, you can just copy and paste them into your Logic apps. Maybe you want to alert on database regressions if you are the head of the development department and you want to track, do we have more long-running SQL queries this month compared to the month before? Maybe you are interested in job queue failures so that you can get an alert. And I know some partners are actually alerting, putting into Teams with a card where they have a button and they click and they can restart that job queue entry directly from Teams. It could be that you have set up alerts on sensitive field monitoring. That feature by default will send an email if you have configured to send an email from the product. But in here you could set up different alerts. You could set up an alert to Teams that someone changed a bank account, or you could set up an alert to a different Teams channel that someone changed a specific configuration setting in an environment that is something you want to follow up with the customer. So many different scenarios, and maybe your scenario is just have a Custo query that you can copy paste, and now we can start alert on that. Let's get back to the model. So the last stage is what is called pervasive. This is where you are now using the full palette of tools for telemetry, not only the low-hanging fruits, but everything from alerting, Power BI apps, maybe troubleshooting guides, maybe even you have shared with your customer. Some partners share the usage report directly with the project sponsor or the IT manager for the customer, and they can use data instead of progress reports on how is it going. That could be both for go live, after go live, or even as a follow-up tool. So there are a number of different things that you want to do. The last thing is actually, I think, the most important, that you start having feedback loops from telemetry, that you learn something from telemetry that you then decide to change something. Could be that once you start looking at error telemetry, that this is not good enough. We need to change our development practices so that we don't get so many errors for customers. Or whatever it is that you learn from telemetry, and that feeds back into the processes you have in your partner practice and helps you be data-driven all the way through. All right. So I showed you the Power BI app for environment telemetry. How do you get all this? Well, that is very, very easy. You go to either AppSource or use this short URL, aka.ms/bc telemetry report. It takes you to AppSource for Power BI apps, and you click Get it now, have it installed. You need to configure the app to point to your telemetry. You need to say how many days of data you want to look back, and you want to specify the time zone of your customer if these time of day visuals need to reflect what 12 o'clock means for your customers. Then they will update with data, and they will update every night at midnight with how many days you will look back. So if you set the report to look back 7 days, you will have a sliding window of that, and that will be refreshed every night. You don't have to do anything. I mentioned that you can share the report with others. All of this is documented here on Docs. So if you go to documentation for telemetry, or just use this short URL, aka.ms/BC telemetry, takes you to the documentation of telemetry. And down here you have how to use the Power BI app. And it's shown here how to get it, how to set it up, how to configure it after the fact, how to share it with coworkers or customers. And then in the end of this also usage scenarios such as the ones that I described for different personas in your partner practice. Maybe look at these usage scenarios to get a quick start. But there's more. We also recently announced public preview at the BC Tech Days conference that we have a new Power BI app for ISVs, or what we call for app telemetry. And I would like to show you a few of these pages that you can now use for your app, for your Business Central app. Here we are in the ISV app, and the first thing you notice if you go up to the corner here is that the icon is different. So this is just a small help to make sure that you are using the ISV app and not the per environment app. So you get this small AL icon instead of the Business Central icon. Now for Business Central app telemetry, you have parts of telemetry a bit less than you have for the environment, and in other areas you have something that is not emitted to the per environment telemetry. So for usage here, if you use things like feature telemetry module that I talked about earlier, your feature telemetry, both usage and uptake, will go into this, and you can actually see how often your users of your app is using this particular feature. You can also see things like Azure Key Vault usage. I don't have any data to show you, but if you use, and you should, Azure Key Vault for secrets, retrieving secrets in your app, then you can see the usage of that here. More importantly, probably you want to see whether that fails. So if I take you to the error report here, I can go and you can see Key Vault errors, which means that if you ever get any errors looking up something in Key Vault, you would see it here, and you can see which customers are affected by that. You would also see another interesting thing here. If you use, again, this feature telemetry module in the system application, you will get error telemetry directly in the report here for your apps. These are not necessarily errors that users see. This could also be all these parts in your AL code where you write a comment, never gets here. Maybe you want to log that if that happens, because of course it does happen sometimes. Then put that in error telemetry in the feature errors, and then you would have analytics on it. What else? You also get something that the environment telemetry do not get. You get update performance report. So why is this important? Well, the thing is, you get, for each of your apps here, you get performance update report. In this release, we are adding a new feature to speed up upgrades for apps, and that's called data transfer. If you see high numbers here on updates for your apps, it could be that your app is hurting the customer because they cannot update within their upgrade window. So it might be that you want to look at your apps and see where they are here and see if you can use data transfer to reduce the update time for your apps. And then finally, under the administration report, you also get an inventory report. Now, this is not inventory for environments. This would now be inventory in this this demo data, I have some of the demo data from Freddie's work on ALGO for GitHub. So he is the publisher, and he has a number of different apps here, Bing Maps with different versions. And I can actually go in now and see what's the count of these different versions. How many people out there in the wild are currently running on this version of my app? And if that's not enough, you can also see who is actually running, which customers are actually running this particular version of my app. So that's a way to go from inventory to the actual install base, and this is all based on telemetry. So if no one is touching your apps for 90 days, which is your retention policy, you might not get the full picture. But I think it's still something that could be worthwhile. The next thing is upgrade flows, so you can see who upgrades to and from different versions. Let me just see if I can find something that looks a bit nicer. Let me find an app here, Bing Maps. So just for this visual to be a little bigger. So what you see here is upgrade flows from this particular version flowing in, updating to this version, or maybe updating to the next version, and so on. And the size of these actually show you how many upgraded from one version to another. So these, and you also get the state of this, so you can see from this version of my app to this version of my app, the percentage of my customers that failed was this. You get app source validations. So in this, let me just clear the filter up here. So these are the requests. If you are an ISV that have an app on App Source, you can send requests to validate your app against a number of country versions and or versions of Business Central. So for this particular request, it seems like we were validating the Bing Maps app in this version, and we want to validate that against US, DK, Italy on these different versions. So down here you get the validations of all these things in the matrix, all the versions down here, all the language versions, country versions down here, whether they fail or succeed. You get statistics for that. And you can even, for each of these, go further down if I have any data for, see if I have something with some data for here. For the actual validations, whether they succeeded or failed, for this is my app. This is the validation I want to validate against Business Central version 20.0 and the localization of Danish localization. And I get a full matrix of how this particular validation is going. So I can see things like, do we always get validation errors against the Danish version? Do we always get validation errors against version 19.5 and so on? So you can use that to analyze the quality of your DevOps and maybe make these validations faster and not get so many errors. Finally, both for this report and also for the environment report, you get in the administration a new report on what data you have in telemetry. So first of all, you get statistics of which events are the most noisy or occur often. This relates to cost control that we'll cover in a few minutes. And you can also zoom in on another thing for apps. Maybe you want to see which of my customers of my app emit the most telemetry. Maybe you have either some of these are your own test environments. Maybe you want to filter them out and not get telemetry for that. So you can use the app to kind of see maybe there are places where you want to reduce your cost because you don't want data for that. And with telemetry, the first 5 gigabytes a month is free. Above that, you pay something for the data you ingest. So maybe you want to only ingest the data that you find useful. And you can use this report to see where you are, where you might have some costs that you can cut. So how do you get the ISV app or the Power BI app on App Telemetry? This one is also on AppSource. It has this URL, aka.ms/bc telemetry-isv-app. You can also just search for this on AppSource and find it there. You install it the same way as per environment. Get it now, install, configure it with the Application Insights resource where data is stored, and then you're up and running. So let's talk about telemetry costs. I explained that the 5 first gigabytes per month is free, and that is for each subscription, Azure subscription. There's a new thing coming in Application Insights that helps you control costs. And this is where that part of the Power BI apps that show you distribution of events and how different environments or apps inject or ingest data into telemetry can be very useful. It's called Data Collection Rules, and I'll just show you how to set that up. You go to Application Insights portal for your Application Insights resource, and here in the overview, you need to find the part here that says Workspace. Now, if you don't see Workspace here, this is because your Application Insights resource is on what is called Classic. It is just a fancy word for deprecated. You need to move from Classic into Workspace Application Insights. So that's the new model, and everyone will be moved there eventually. Just go and migrate. It's a click, clickety click, and now you have your data there, and you have the Workspace link. So let's go to the Workspace. And this will take us to, if you look up here, you can see that it says Log Analytics Workspace. This is just a fancy word for the back end of Application Insights. This is where data is stored. It's called Log Analytics. Down on the menu here on the left, we have a new option called Tables Preview. And this is where you configure the data collection rules. So let's take a look. Now, Log Analytics can hold data for a lot of different products in Azure, including Application Insights. So the names of these tables are a little bit different than what you are used to from Application Insights. In Application Insights, we typically query 2 different tables. One is called Traces, and another one is called Page Views. These are named with a prefix of app in Log Analytics, and then they are capitalized. So let's say that we want to change some data collection rules for the traces table in Application Insights. This is called app traces. So it's actually it's this guy here. I simply right click here and I say Create Transformation. That takes me to a new page where I can put in that I would like to create a new data collection rule, and I would just give this a name, Launch Event Rule, and I probably cannot have any spaces, Launch Event Rule, and then I click Done. And now I say next. And here there's something hidden a bit, but especially if you're in dark mode. This guy up here is called is actually a button, Transformation Editor. If I click this, I'm giving an editor where I can write a Custo query. The Custo query always starts with source, but now I can put in some conditions, say source where something. And now I have access to the telemetry that you know, the schema you know in Application Insights for Business Central. So I can say something like, let me take custom dimensions dot event ID equals, let's say RT0004. Maybe I want to do this. So maybe I want to filter set a filter where I only take the events RT004 and scratch the rest. So whatever you put in as a custo query here is filtering either accepting data or blocking data from being ingested into application insights. So how do you determine which rules are good? Fortunately, we added some samples that make that very easy. Let me show you a few examples of those. So I'm back on the main page of BC Tech, and down here under KQL and under Queries, there's a directory here called Data Collection Rules. If I click this, I have added 3 different custo queries that can help you in different scenarios to filter on things. Let's try one where you think this particular event ID is something I would like to filter out. So let's take a look at this. So here in this custo sample query, there are a number of different events that might be, or ways to filter that might be of interest for you. The first one here is filter out a single event. So the expression you need to put into that data collection rule is source where properties.eventID, so the custom dimensions is called properties, is not this particular event. And then now you filter this out. You can also, of course, say I do not want these 2 event IDs and I want to keep everything else. Or you could go advanced and say, I have a problem with incoming web service calls, telemetry. They're flooding me and I don't want to pay for all of that. So I only want to get them if they error. And error means that your HTTP status code is not in the 200 range. So if I get an error from incoming web service request, I'll take it. If not, then I will say no thank you. So all this will block out any like normal web service requests, and there's this OR expression here will then accept everything else. So take a look at these samples. I hope that we covered the main scenarios, either filtering on environments, filtering on apps, or filtering on events. There are a few other things that you might want to know with controlling costs. So data collection rules is the newest kid on the block, but there are standard tricks that we also added to docs that can help you control costs. First of all, you can control your data ingestion cost with sampling or daily caps, and you should set that up. Or you can reduce your data retention costs by only keeping 90 days standard of data. So all of this is in docs in telemetry, so you can use these tools or these methods as well. And that's important when you start on the journey of telemetry, because the first question you will get from whoever is going to pay for this is, how much does it cost? Well, if you make sure that you set reasonable, say, daily caps on this can never explode, and this will always be giving you data, and then you can use these different techniques to make sure that you only get the data that is important for you. I must say that many of Business Central partners just use telemetry as is, and they don't pay like hundreds of dollars a month for telemetry. Some have told me that they pay maybe $10 or $20 or $30 a month having telemetry, and this is a huge win for them to have this data compared to them having to guess what's going on. So, wrapping up, some go-dos for you to take home to your partner practice. First of all, of course, set up telemetry and make sure that you set up and monitor costs so you don't get any nasty surprises there. There's no need for that. It's an Azure service like anything else, so make sure that you have some cost control there. Then use the maturity model as a playbook for how to go from the lower levels to higher levels. Maybe pick and choose some ideas. The most important thing for me is that we help you get more data-driven. We've seen with Microsoft what telemetry and using data to take decisions and troubleshooting, what they can do for us as a product group, and it's the same thing I want for you in your partner practices. Go and install and use these Power BI apps. They are free on AppSource, they are open source. You need a Power BI Pro license for each user. That will cost you $10 a month. And of course, this is both for you as a VAR and the new public preview app as an ISV. And then start setting up some alerts. Maybe just pick a few from the sample, either the ones that you deploy from Docs, or maybe some of the extra samples we have on BC Tech. And just start getting a little bit more less reactive and more proactive with telemetry. I'm sure that that's going to change a lot on the way you deal with your customers. And with that, I wish you a happy launch event, and thank you for having me here.